Much of our conversation about the geopolitics in Ukraine has been around crude and its impact for gas prices, inflation, and all the things on the top of investors' mind this year. So maybe we should also be talking about alternatives to those classic energy sources. Nuclear, one that often comes into the conversation. Let's have that conversation now with Seth Grae, President and CEO at Lightbridge, ticker LTBR, and a company that, from what I understand, makes nuclear fuel. Seth, welcome to the show, and I'm probably missing something simple, but what is nuclear fuel?
Basically, the fuel rods that go in the reactor, it's what powers the reactor.
Okay. Now, second question, on your site, on the front page, you've got the twinkling Chicago skyline. Are you involved? We're based in Chicago. Do you have something going on here?
We're not particularly involved with Chicago.
Okay.
We have some advisors from Exelon, which is based in Chicago. We have some investors from Chicago, and it has a pretty skyline.
Okay, all right. So right now, what are you doing? Is this trying to campaign to get the world to approve of nuclear energy more, or are you working directly with the existing plants?
Yeah, it's both. We are designing an advanced fuel that will work in the existing plants, making them safer, improve their economics, and make them non-proliferative around the world, so you can't use the waste to make weapons. We're also designing a variant for the new small modular reactors that are coming for exports around the world. And Lightbridge also advises countries that are starting nuclear power programs. And for example, we wrote the strategic plan for nuclear power for the United Arab Emirates.
And right now, Seth, what is the status of growth in this industry in America? There's a louder and louder chorus I hear calling for nuclear plants, but still being met with quite a bit of opposition. Are there new plants going up?
Yeah, there are two large nuclear plants being built in South Carolina that'll be finished, one about a year from now, one about 2 years from now. There's a new small modular reactor that NuScale is going to build in Idaho. GE Hitachi is going to be exporting their new small modular reactor to Ontario, Canada. And there's a lot of action around these new small modular reactors, including choosing some sites of coal plants where some of them can be built on those sites.
Wow. Now, is that to replace the coal, or is this coal that's already been shut down?
It's going to be to replace the coal plants that have been shut down, or will be shut down, but use workers from there, use cooling water, use the connection to the electric grid, use a lot of existing infrastructure at the site, and potentially use the turbine, the generator, some of the infrastructure from the coal plant itself.
Now, Seth, when you say small module reactors, how should we think about that compared to whatever we might already know about nuclear reactors?
Yeah, generally about a little less than a third size. Most reactors in the U.S. are about 1,100 megawatts electric. Small modular reactors in the U.S. will top out at about 300 megawatts electric, so a little less than a third the power output per plant.
And are your contracts, thinking about from the business, from the stock side of this, as those new plants go up, what is your relationship like from a service and a business perspective? Are you committed to work with them throughout the entirety of the life of the plant, or is it to help them start? You sell your products, your rods, and then you see what happens from there?
Yeah, it's more the latter. It's that we will be selling fuel to the reactors, and then during the life of the reactor, about every couple of years, they'll need to buy more fuel to replace some of the fuel that's been used. So it'll continue with future sales going forward. But really, the utilities that operate the plants will operate the plants, will be a fuel provider, and that will be our ongoing link to the plant.
In your opinion, expertise, it sounds like you have international knowledge and experience with governments, consulting and designing. What happens with Russia's invasion of Ukraine? Notably, I read overnight that they took Chernobyl. Does that have any meaning for the industry or for the energy? How does that, what is that story to you?
Well, Look, when a military seizes Chernobyl, it's obviously headlines and is going to raise concerns. There's no indication that anyone is doing anything harmful at the site. There's not too much of harm that could be done at the site.
Right.
The remains of that reactor core are underground, under concrete, covered by a steel archway over that. Even if that were hit with mortar or something, there's just not that much radioactive material that would escape.
That's good news.
It's basically things that would settle locally. This would not be a big international incident.
Okay. Seth, here at home, if let's say a major city like New York or Chicago called you up and said, "Hey, Seth, get all the nuclear guys you know together. We're ready to put a plant, outside of downtown here, Chicago." Is that something that is ready to go? Is it just legislation that's holding back the proliferation of this style of power, or is it mechanically or too capital intensive to do at this moment?
Well, right now, for the big reactors, I'd say it's probably too capital intensive to do. I don't think we're going to see another project like we're seeing in South Carolina in the United States anytime soon in order for large reactors. But the small reactors, as I said, are starting to get orders. And I think as they're proved out, where this is an industry where everyone wants to be first to be second, where people want to see someone else deploy these new small reactors with less capital, have them operate safely, have them operate reliably, and then jump on the bandwagon. I think that's what's going to happen. And particularly as companies, regions are looking to get off CO2 emissions, these zero carbon nuclear reactors will be more attractive. And they could operate 24/7. It doesn't matter if the wind blows or the sun shines.
And how much power?
Gas well freeze up. Sorry?
How much power do the small modules provide?
Yeah, well, a typical small modular reactor will provide power for a pretty good sized city, say everything that a city of about 300,000-400,000 people would need.
Okay. Now, I've also, one other one here is thorium. I've been reading about this. I was actually watching a video about thorium last week, thinking about this for Chicago. Some argue that that's a less dangerous way to build a reactor using that element instead of uranium. Any thoughts on that subject?
Well, it's not necessarily a difference to the reactor. It's a difference to the fuel. And we've developed some fuels using thorium too at Lightbridge. Right now we're focusing on a uranium metallic fuel. But thorium is something that is abundant in the world, that has some non-proliferation advantages. But there are ways to equal those advantages with an advanced uranium fuel too. There's a lot of interest in India in thorium because India has a lot of thorium in the ground and hardly any uranium. So a lot of the research is going on there.
And the 300 to 400,000 city population quote you gave me, that means we'd have to do about 5 of those for Chicago. Can you put small nuclear reactors, these modules next to each other? Can you put them nearby?
Yeah, and that was, I was talking about the larger versions.
Okay, okay.
Go way down from there too. But yeah, you could. In fact, there are plans in some places to deploy one, then deploy another next to it, and then another next to it, and you certainly could do that.
Very interesting. Okay. Seth, a very cool conversation. We needed it after this week. Some interesting science lesson. Next time we come back, we'll talk some more about the business and the operations from a stock perspective. But a lot to take in already with the science. Appreciate you answering all the questions and being here with us today.
Thank you.
All right, good stuff. Seth Grae, President and CEO at Lightbridge, LTBR.